Welcome back to our podcast. I'm your host, Jirah Perrymond, and today we are doing our Freaky Friday series every Friday like we do normally. And this is a series where we take a decade, we go back in time, and we learn more about it and things that we might not have known before. So today we have two guests that were actually born in the 70s. Well, I'm sorry, not born in the 70s. They lived through the 70s, and they're here to talk about the decade and kind of fill us in on some information. We are so happy to have you here on the show, and we are so appreciative. And our viewers and myself can't wait to learn more about the 70s. So what was it like living in such a wild time?
It was amazing. Like, I have so many memories just living through the 70s, all the different hairstyles and different cultures. It was just amazing on my behalf.
Exactly.
The 70s was like definitely really new to me. There were so many new styles and hairstyles, and even the music was just so different.
Right.
And I just think it was just a good time to live during that time.
I could imagine, they had different hairstyles, trends, and that's what we're here to talk about today. So could you possibly explain, the different fashion trends, some of the hairstyles that were, popular at the time, and how did that change for you guys and seeing that in real time?
Well, for me, what was really different was the hairstyles were really big and bold, and you just wanted to have your hair all in an afro, just really, really fun. And I think, hairstyle took a really big change during that time.
Right, because you had never seen people with, bigger hairstyles. Everybody had, the straight or, the smaller hairstyles. So it was really, it made a huge impact because people were wearing their hair out more. So I think it definitely took a change. What can you say about it, Ms. Claire?
Personally, I just more focused on the fashion aspects, and fashion was completely different during this time. Women during this era, they would focus on making things from home, knitting, embroidery, doing things like that. So it just set a big fashion trend during the 70s of kind of DIYing your own things and stuff like that.
Okay, so as pertain to sort of entertainment, music, I know that, going into the 70s that completely changed, and there was a lot of new styles, there was a lot of new artists. So could you practically give us some insight about, the entertainment, what was popular, sort of music styles and music artists, anything like that?
Yeah, so the 70s, it was a completely from the 60s or the 50s or even 20 years ago, it's completely different because there's so many new genres. There's hip hop now, there's pop, there's hard rock, soft rock, things like that.
Right.
So, with all these new genres, it was a boom for new artists and upcoming artists and things like that. There was some new, a very good group that is well known today, the Jackson 5, and which brought up Michael Jackson, was a really big influence on the 70s considering all these new genres that was made. So, and there's other artists too, Helen Reddy, she made I Am a Woman, which is a very popular song now. So it's just things like that.
Agreed. Do you have anything to say about that, Miss Roxanne?
Definitely, I feel a lot of people talk about how even hip hop was kind of something in the 1980s after, but really you really start to see a rise of hip hop even as late as the 1970s, and I got to experience that. So I think it's really cool to kind of see all these music trends grow and just become the popular stuff we listen to.
Exactly. And that's really interesting to hear because, like you said, a lot of people do think that rap spiraled out of the 80s. So it's interesting to know that, we brought you guys onto the show. So it's great to, I think a lot of people don't know that hip hop actually did spiral out of the 70s, and a lot of people probably had forgotten that or just didn't know that. So I think that's a very good point. I do want to ask, were there any, I know you said Jackson 5, you mentioned another lady, and were there any other popular celebrities at the time, or just people that everybody was listening to?
Well, there were a lot of celebrities during this time, not only just in the music industry, due to the movie industry and TV shows becoming very popular during this time. But one lady who was a singer was Diana Ross. She was a bestseller during this time period, especially during this time period. She won many awards like the Golden Globe Award and stuff like that, but there were also a lot of women during this time who also went into the film industry. Jessica Lange, she won the Triple Crown Acting Award, and Cher, who was also a pop artist during this time, she kind of used the 70s as her like an enzyme to
Right.
push herself into like nowadays, especially with her like hit movie. What's it called? She had a movie during this time. It was
Right,
really,
yeah.
it was good for the young kids nowadays. So
Yeah, I think that's an interesting spin on it because when we think of the 70s, we're automatically tied to, you know, the music, the fashion trends, the hairstyles, but a lot of times we don't think about the film industry, the music industry tied into the film industry, and I think that's a very good point that you just brought up. So we also have a question from a viewer. They were asking, were there any new technologies that were created and invented? Were there, you know, new things that just people, you know, could kind of relate to and use and all that?
well, one of the biggest inventions that is used today as like we speak is the cell phone. It was created, a prototype of the cell phone was created in 1973 by Martin Cooper, and you know, we're using them as like you can use to call
Right.
and record and things like that. So that was just something I guess that just blew up during this time. And another thing was the digital camera. You know, without cameras nowadays, nothing could be captured. You couldn't capture like things for books,
Right.
like entertainment, things like that. So those are just important things that were, I mean, there's more, but there's just some of those things. Like also that can tie in with cell phones too. The GPS was also made. It wasn't like the GPS that's on your phone or like the one that's on your car, but it's like, it's something that was similar, even though like it was like created during the 70s, but it wasn't like officially like sold out
Exactly.
into like the 80s. But
See, I find that so unique because, you know, the GPS you mentioned and the cellular device of like a phone, it's crazy because now we have, you know, 50 years later, there's phones that you can just pull it out. You've got all types of different apps on there, more than just call and text. You've got apps. You can play games on your phone, everything. So I think that just knowing that that came out of that time period at that time is just so cool. I actually don't have any more questions for you guys, but is there anything you would like to leave us with about the 70s? Any final points?
Definitely I feel like something that's really important is also like the start of all this new type of like entertainment and like what we would do in our free time. And like definitely something I feel like is really known in the 70s is like the skating and the going to the arcades.
Right.
And the just being with friends and family, and we don't really do that a lot during these times now, but I remember being young and just always being at the skating thing and skating around, listening to music and just having all that around is like really exciting. And also like there were so many just new stuff going on, like even like the Star Wars movies were coming out. That's when
Right.
Star Wars started coming out, like Jaws started coming out. So I feel like the 70s really honestly was a time of being together, being family-wise, going to the movies, just doing all sorts of these different type of things that you do like together.
Right.
I think that's really important to think about when you think about the 70s.
yeah, like the 70s is kind of like the blueprint for like everything that we have
Exactly.
today. Like when people think of the 70s, they think of like retro and everything, you know, things like that, like the different styles and like it's just, I think it's like the only way you can describe it is like the blueprint for like the future
Exactly.
now. So
For sure. And I think that when you like, it's funny to say, but like when you do think of the 70s, you're thinking about like that like funk and time period, like you're hanging around your friends, and it's difficult to say that because, you know, now we're living in a time where we had the pandemic and all of that, so it's fun to think about those memories and really think about a time where people were so together. Everybody was, you know, familiar with each other, and everybody had a common, you know, a common thing. So I think that's really interesting to hear. Also, we are sponsored. All of our questions are coming in today by Living Water Sanitizer. And yeah, Living Water Sanitizer is great. They have a lot of alcohol in the sanitizer. Anyways, so it was great having you guys on the show, Miss Claire and Roxanne. We greatly appreciate it. We had a very good time today learning about the 70s, and you really took us back and gave us a lot of new information that we did not already know. So to the fans and the viewers watching, thank you for joining us today, and that is the end of our segment on Freaky Friday. Bye.